You know what they say about humans? They say they are soft, weak, pink little creatures who somehow stumbled into space travel through sheer dumb luck. Well, let me tell you something. Whoever said that clearly never met Maya Reeves. My name is Korth 9, and I am what you might call a military instructor at the Galactic Defense Academy on Station Zerion Prime. I have trained over 3,000 cadets from 47 different species across my 20-cycle career. I have seen Vorthag warriors who could crush steel with their bare claws, Zenthari shock troopers who could survive in the vacuum of space for hours, and Polonian berserkers who literally foam at the mouth during combat. But nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, prepared me for that particular human female. The day started like any other boring rotation. The morning briefing was the usual drivel from Commander Vex Toll about maintaining standards and proper protocol. Hey, as if any of us needed reminding about how to break in fresh recruits. I had been doing this job since before most of these new instructors had even hatched from their spawning pods. The roster showed we had a mixed batch today, 2 Krillian heavy infantry prospects, 1 Deltarian pilot candidate, 3 Vortex specialists, and, oh wonderful, 1 human from the newly contacted Earth. Another Deathworlder experiment, I muttered to my assistant instructor, Zeke Prime. Command thinks they are so clever, mixing these primitive species into our elite programs. Zeke Prime's mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among his kind. Remember the last batch of Regellians? Half of them quit after the first day of basic conditioning. At least the Regellians had the sense to quit, I replied, reviewing the human's file on my datapad. This one, Maya Reeves, 22 standard years old, comes from something called Detroit. Previous occupation listed as construction worker. I had to read that twice. They are sending us manual laborers now. The file was disappointingly thin. Height 1.7 meters. Weight 68 kilograms. No notable physical augmentations, no combat training, no military background whatsoever. Just another soft-bodied mammal who probably thought space combat was like the holographic entertainment programs their species seemed so fond of. When the recruits filed into Training Bay 7, I spotted her immediately. While the other cadets maintained proper military bearing, this Maya creature was actually looking around the facility with what could only be described as casual interest. Not fear, not nervousness, just mild curiosity, like she was touring a museum. Attention, maggots. I bellowed, using the traditional opening that had worked for generations. Welcome to the most miserable 15 weeks of your pathetic lives. By the time I am finished with you, half of you will wash out, a quarter will require medical intervention, and the rest will wish they had never been spawned. The Krillians straightened to full attention, their chitinous exoskeletons gleaming. The Deltarians' feathers ruffled with obvious anxiety. The Vortex synchronized their breathing patterns in a display of species solidarity. And the human, she yawned. Actually yawned. Right there in formation. I pointed directly at her with my primary manipulator. The pink one, did my opening speech bore you? Maya Reeves turned those strange, predatory forward-facing eyes toward me and shrugged. Kind of, yeah, I mean, no offense, but I have heard tougher speeches from my old foreman back at the construction site. At least he had more creative vocabulary. The entire bay fell silent. Even the environmental systems seemed to hush in anticipation. In 20 cycles of instruction, no recruit had ever responded to my intimidation protocol with anything approaching flippancy. Is that so? I moved closer, towering over her diminutive frame with my 2-meter height advantage. Perhaps you would prefer we skip the preliminaries and move directly to practical demonstrations. Sure, she said, completely unbothered by my imposing presence. Sounds more interesting than another lecture about how tough you are going to make things for us. Zeke Prime made a strangled noise that I recognized as barely suppressed panic. The other recruits exchanged worried glances. This human clearly had no idea what she had just gotten herself into. Very well, I announced to the group. Today's first lesson will be practical hand-to-hand combat assessment. Since our enthusiastic volunteer here seems eager to skip the basics, she will demonstrate first. I gestured toward the sparring circle in the center of the bay. Standard engagement rules apply. First to achieve submission hold or force opponent out of bounds wins. Medical staff is standing by for inevitable injuries. Maya walked to the circle with the same casual gait she had maintained since arriving. No pre-combat breathing exercises, no stretching routine, no mental preparation rituals. She just stood there, hands at her sides, looking mildly bored. Your opponent, I continued, savoring what was about to happen, will be Cadet Throkvar. The Krillian stepped forward, his massive frame casting a shadow over the tiny human. Throkvar was a prime specimen of his species, 2.5 meters tall, with natural armor plating and 4 arms ending in razor-sharp claws. His family lineage included 12 generations of professional gladiators, and his entrance scores had been the highest we had seen from a Krillian in decades. No weapons, no protective gear, I announced. Begin when ready. Throkvar assumed the traditional Krillian combat stance, balancing on his powerful legs, while all 4 arms positioned for optimal striking angles. He had clearly studied the human anatomy files, because his positioning suggested he intended to end this quickly with minimal damage. Professional, efficient, exactly what I expected from a top-tier recruit. Maya just stood there, hands still at her sides, still looking bored. "Any time now, Deathworlder," Throkvar said, his translator rendering his clicks and hisses into standard galactic. "I am prepared to begin whenever you are ready to assume proper combat position." "Oh, I am ready," Maya replied, "just waiting for you to actually do something." That was when Throkvar made his first mistake. He interpreted her casual stance as ignorance rather than confidence. His second mistake was assuming that human reaction times were as slow as their official documentation suggested. His third mistake was grabbing her arm. It happened faster than my enhanced optics could track. One moment Throkvar was reaching forward with his upper right manipulator to seize what he probably thought was an easy hold. The next moment he was on the ground, screaming in a pitch that made every being in the bay wince, clutching his now very obviously broken elbow joint. Maya had not moved more than half a meter from her original position. She was examining her fingernails with the same bored expression she had worn throughout the entire encounter. "Medical team to Training Bay 7, I called out, more from shock than concern. "We have a code yellow injury situation." As the medics rushed in to attend to the writhing Krillian, I found myself reassessing everything I thought I knew about human physiology. The official report stated that their species possessed average strength, limited natural weapons, and reaction times well below galactic standard. Yet somehow this unremarkable female had just disabled one of the most formidable warrior races in known space without even breathing hard. "How?" Zeke Prime whispered, his usual composure completely shattered. The leverage ratios alone should have made that impossible. Krillian joint structure is specifically evolved to resist that type of manipulation. Maya overheard and looked over at us. "Physics," she said simply. "Find the right angle, apply pressure in the right direction, and it does not matter how strong your opponent is. Bone breaks the same way regardless of what planet you are from." "But the speed," Zeke Prime continued, clearly struggling with what he had witnessed. "Our sensors clocked your movement at nearly instantaneous response time. Human reflexes are not supposed to be capable of that kind of performance." Maya shrugged again. "Guess your data is wrong. Or maybe you just never tested it on someone who actually knows how to fight." I felt my worldview shifting in ways that were deeply uncomfortable. "You said you were a construction worker." I was. Demolition specialist, mostly. But Detroit is not exactly the safest place in the galaxy, if you know what I mean. You learn to handle yourself, or you do not make it very long. The medical team had managed to stabilize Throkvar and were preparing to transport him to the facility medical bay. His injury was severe but not life-threatening, though his pride was clearly suffering more damage than his elbow. "This is highly irregular," I announced, trying to regain some semblance of control over the situation. "Combat assessments are supposed to be graduated encounters, not," I gestured at the chaos around us. "Not what?" Maya asked, her tone suggesting genuine curiosity rather than challenge. "Not actual fighting? I thought this was supposed to be military training, not a dance recital." Several of the other recruits made sounds that might have been laughter if they had not been too terrified to express amusement openly. The Deltarians' feathers were now standing completely on end, and the vortex had synchronized their panic responses into a harmonious pattern of anxiety. "The point of graduated training," I explained through gritted teeth, "is to build skills progressively while minimizing unnecessary injuries to valuable personnel." "Right," Maya nodded. "That makes sense for people who need to learn how to fight. But what about those of us who already know?" There it was again. That casual confidence that had no business existing in someone who had never received formal military training. I had seen it before in a few exceptional candidates, but never from a species that was supposed to be, well, harmless. "Very well," I decided. "If you believe your current skill level exceeds our standard curriculum, perhaps we should adjust your training accordingly." Zik Prime shot me a look that clearly conveyed his opinion of this decision, but I was committed now. 20 cycles of experience had taught me that sometimes the best way to handle an overconfident recruit was to give them exactly what they thought they wanted. "The next phase of combat assessment involves multiple opponents and weapons training," I continued. "Since you seem to find our basic protocols insufficient, we will move directly to intermediate-level scenarios." "Sounds good to me," Maya said. "When do we start?" "Right now." I activated the training bay's combat simulation systems. Computer, initiate program Delta 7. Multiple opponent scenario, melee weapons permitted, safety protocols at standard levels. The bay transformed around us as holographic environments materialized and equipment dispensers emerged from the walls. The other recruits were directed to observation positions where they could watch without interfering. "Your objective," I explained as Maya examined the weapon selection, "is to neutralize 4 armed opponents using any available tools or weapons. The simulation will end when all targets are eliminated or when you are rendered unable to continue." She selected what appeared to be a simple combat knife, testing its balance with a few experimental motions. "Any particular rules about how I neutralize them?" "Standard engagement protocols apply. Disable opponents through any means necessary short of permanent termination." "Got it." She moved to the center of the simulation area as 4 holographic opponents materialized around her. They were programmed to represent average soldiers from various species, each armed with different melee weapons and trained in distinct combat styles. What happened next changed everything I thought I knew about humans, about combat training, and about the fundamental assumptions underlying our entire military educational system. The first opponent, a simulated Viridian swordsman, approached with textbook form and perfect technique. Maya waited until he committed to his attack, then stepped inside his reach and drove her knife up under his guard. The hologram flickered and vanished as the computer registered a fatal strike. The second and third opponents tried to coordinate their assault, attacking from opposite directions to split her attention. Maya solved this problem by throwing her knife at one while simultaneously grabbing the weapon from the other. The blade found its mark with surgical precision while she used the acquired weapon to parry and counter in a single fluid motion. The fourth opponent, clearly programmed with adaptive AI, attempted to maintain distance and use reach advantage. Maya responded by doing something that violated every principle of sound tactical doctrine. She charged directly into his weapon range, accepted a glancing blow to her shoulder, and used the momentum to drive both of them to the ground, where superior grappling skills decided the encounter in seconds. Total elapsed time, 47 seconds. The simulation ended, and Maya stood up, brushing dust off her uniform. The shoulder that had taken the impact showed no sign of injury, though I was certain the computer had registered sufficient force to cause significant damage to most species. "Not bad," she said, apparently reviewing her own performance. The second and third guys had decent coordination, but the fourth one telegraphed his moves too much. Real fighters would not be that predictable. I stared at her in complete silence for what felt like several minutes. Around the observation area, the other recruits were engaged in whispered conversations that I was certain violated about 15 different regulations regarding proper decorum during training exercises. Questions, concerns, comments, Maya asked, looking directly at me with those unsettling forward-facing eyes. How? The question came out before I could stop it. According to every military database in the galaxy, humans are supposed to be average. Unremarkable. Your species has no natural weapons, limited physical capabilities, and reaction times that rank in the bottom third of all spacefaring races. Maya laughed. Actually laughed out loud, as if I had just told her the most amusing joke she had ever heard. "Oh, that is rich," she said, wiping tears from her eyes. "You really think we made it to the top of the food chain on a Deathworld by being average?" "Deathworld," Zeke Prime interjected. "Earth is classified as a standard Class M planet with normal environmental parameters." "Normal?" Maya's expression shifted to something that made my survival instincts start sending warning signals. "Friend, Earth is a planet where the weather can kill you, the animals can kill you, the plants can kill you, the geography can kill you, and sometimes the very air can kill you. We have natural disasters that make your worst military weapons look like toys, and predators that evolved specifically to hunt other predators." She gestured around the training bay. "This whole setup. This is nothing compared to what I dealt with just getting to work every morning back home. You want to know why humans seem average in your databases? Because we are not trying to impress anyone. We are just trying to survive long enough to figure out what all the fuss is and about." The implications of what she was saying hit me like a plasma torpedo to the cognitive centers. If Earth was actually a significantly more dangerous environment than our xenological surveys had indicated, then human capabilities were being dramatically underestimated across the board. Furthermore, Maya continued, "Where I come from, everyone learns to fight. Not because we want to, but because the alternative is becoming a victim. You can have all the technology and education in the galaxy, but if someone bigger and meaner decides they want what you have, you better know how to stop them." She looked around at the other recruits, who were now watching her with expressions ranging from awe to terror. "I am not trying to show off or prove anything. I am just doing what comes naturally. If that makes me dangerous by your standards, maybe you need better standards." There was a long pause as everyone in the bay processed this information. Finally, one of the Vortex raised a tentacle in what passed for a question gesture among their species. "Yes, Cadet Vorthin?" I acknowledged. "Instructor Korth 9, if human capabilities have been significantly underestimated, what does this mean for our current training protocols? Should we expect similar performance from other human recruits?" It was an excellent question, and one that I was not prepared to answer. Maya had just single-handedly demolished several fundamental assumptions about human physiology and combat potential. If she was representative of her species' actual capabilities, then every military assessment, every tactical doctrine, and every strategic planning document involving humans would need to be completely revised. "I guess we will find out," Maya said before I could respond. "My understanding is that there are about 40 more humans scheduled to arrive next rotation. Should be interesting to see how they handle your standard training programs. 40 more. 40 more beings potentially capable of the same level of performance I had just witnessed." The implications were staggering. In the meantime, I announced, trying to regain some semblance of professional authority, "We will continue with scheduled training activities. All recruits report to your assigned stations for individual skill assessments." As the group dispersed, I found myself alone with Maya, who seemed to be waiting for something. "Was there something else?" I asked. "Just wondering if you have any training programs that might actually challenge me," she said. "I mean, I appreciate the warm-up exercises, but I was hoping for something a little more stimulating." I stared at her for a long moment, processing the casual way she had just dismissed combat scenarios that were designed to test experienced soldiers. "We have advanced programs," I said carefully, "but they are typically reserved for senior cadets who have completed basic training." "How advanced?" "Scenarios involving multiple armed opponents, environmental hazards, time pressure constraints, and tactical problem-solving requirements." Maya's eyes lit up with what I was beginning to recognize as genuine enthusiasm. "Now that sounds more like it. When can we start?" 3 days later, I was seriously questioning my career choices. Word about the human incident had spread throughout the entire academy faster than a quantum communication burst. Suddenly, every instructor, administrator, and senior officer wanted to observe Maya's advanced assessment. The viewing gallery of Training Bay Omega was packed with more brass than a Centaurian parade. Commander Vex told himself had descended from his ivory tower to witness this spectacle, along with Chief Academic Officer Prel 9 and Senior Combat Analyst Drac Voss. Even Admiral Krex Theta, the Academy's Supreme Commander, had made an appearance via hololink from his flagship. "No pressure at all," I muttered to Zeke Prime as we ran final systems checks on the most advanced combat simulation the Academy possessed. "Look on the bright side," Zeke Prime replied, his mandibles twitching nervously. "If she fails spectacularly, we can claim we were conducting proper stress testing of overconfident recruits. And if she succeeds, then we pretend we knew this would happen all along and take credit for innovative training methodologies." Maya entered the bay wearing standard combat gear, looking about as concerned as someone ordering breakfast. She nodded politely to the assembled observers, then walked over to where I was standing beside the control console. "So what have you got for me today?" she asked, examining the weapon racks that had been prepared. "Please tell me it is more interesting than last time." "Program Omega 7, I announced, loud enough for the gallery to hear. "Multi-level urban combat scenario with adaptive enemy AI, environmental hazards, civilian protection objectives and resource limitations. 43 opponents of varying capabilities, 7 different weapon systems, changing tactical conditions, and a 30-minute time limit." The gallery fell silent. Omega 7 was notorious throughout the Academy as the program that had never been successfully completed by any single cadet. However, it was designed for full squad assessment, not individual evaluation. "Sounds fun," Maya said, selecting a basic assault rifle and checking its power cell. "Any other rules I should know about?" "Civilian casualties result in immediate failure. Excessive collateral damage results in immediate failure. Running out of time results in immediate failure. Oh, and the enemy AI learns from your tactics as the scenario progresses. So strategies that work early on become less effective as time passes." "Got it. Anything else?" I hesitated, then decided to be completely honest. "Maya, this program has defeated every graduate-level candidate who has attempted it. We are talking about beings with years of advanced military training, specialized equipment, and full tactical support teams. You are asking to run it solo with basic gear." She shrugged in that maddeningly casual way of hers. "Well, somebody has to be first, right?" Before I could respond, she had already moved to the simulation starting position. The bay transformed around her into a detailed replica of a war-torn urban environment, complete with damaged buildings, civilian hiding spots, and hostile positions scattered throughout multiple levels. "Simulation active," the computer announced. "Objective: neutralize all hostile forces while protecting civilian population. Time limit 30 minutes. Good luck, Cadet Reeves." What happened over the next 28 minutes and 37 seconds became the stuff of Academy legend. Maya started by doing something that violated every tactical manual in existence. She ignored the provided cover positions and sprinted directly into the most heavily defended area of the simulation. The AI, programmed to expect cautious, methodical advancement, was caught completely off guard as she vaulted over barricades and engaged targets at point-blank range. The first squad of enemies fell before they could properly respond. Maya had apparently calculated that their positioning was designed to repel conventional attacks, not someone crazy enough to charge directly through their kill zone. By the time they repositioned to engage her new location, she was already moving again. Unconventional, Admiral Krex Theta observed from his holo display. But effective. She is not following any recognized tactical doctrine, Chief Academic Officer Prel 9 added, his tone suggesting this was somehow a personal insult. That is because human tactical doctrine apparently involves doing things that should not work, I replied, watching Maya systematically dismantle the simulation's carefully programmed defensive strategies. The AI adapted quickly as designed. Enemy forces began coordinating more effectively, setting ambushes based on her previous movements, and utilizing superior positioning to force her into disadvantageous engagements. This should have been where the scenario became impossible for a single operator. Instead, Maya adapted faster. When the enemies started predicting her movement patterns, she began using the environment in ways the programmers had never anticipated. She turned damaged buildings into improvised weapons, used civilian evacuation routes as tactical pathways, and somehow managed to make the urban debris work in her favor rather than against her. Is she using the falling concrete as projectile weapons? Senior combat analyst Drac Voss asked, leaning forward in his observation seat. I believe so, Zeke Prime confirmed, checking his sensor readings. She just triggered a controlled collapse of that structure to eliminate 6 targets simultaneously while clearing a path for civilian extraction. That should not be possible with the available equipment, Prel 9 protested. The simulation does not provide sufficient explosive ordnance for structural demolition. On the display, Maya was using her rifle butt to strategically weaken load-bearing supports while directing covering fire at incoming hostiles. The building came down exactly where she wanted it, creating a protective barrier for the civilians while eliminating a sniper position that had been giving her trouble. She is not using explosives, I realized. She is using engineering knowledge. Construction background, remember? She knows how buildings fail. The pace of combat was relentless. Maya moved through the urban environment like she had been born in it, flowing from engagement to engagement without pause. The AI threw everything it had at her: sniper teams, heavy weapons squads, coordinated assault groups, even aerial drones. Nothing worked. She dealt with snipers by collapsing their perches. Heavy weapons were neutralized by forcing operators into close quarters where their equipment became a liability. Coordinated assaults were broken up by using civilian safety requirements against the attackers, forcing them to expose themselves while trying to avoid collateral damage. The aerial drones presented the biggest challenge, since they could attack from angles the urban environment did not provide cover against. Maya solved this problem by improvising anti-aircraft weapons from simulation debris and her own equipment. Watching her turn a damaged vehicle into a projectile launcher was like witnessing physics being bent to someone's will through sheer determination. 25 minutes elapsed, the computer announced. 18 hostile targets remaining. Maya was now operating in the upper levels of the tallest building in the simulation, having systematically worked her way through every defensive position from ground level up. The remaining enemies had consolidated into what should have been an impregnable final stronghold. She dealt with this by doing something that made every military professional in the observation gallery question their career choices. She jumped out of a window. Not randomly, of course. She had apparently calculated the trajectory needed to crash through the window of an adjacent building, and surprising the defenders from an angle they had not bothered to defend because it should have been physically impossible to attack from there. The final engagement lasted less than 90 seconds. When the smoke cleared, all remaining hostile targets had been neutralized, every civilian had been successfully evacuated, and Maya was standing in the middle of what had been the enemy command center, reloading her weapon out of habit. Simulation complete, the computer announced. All objectives achieved. Time remaining, 1 minute, 23 seconds. Congratulations, Cadet Reeves. The observation gallery was dead silent. Maya looked up at the viewing window and waved. That was actually pretty good. Got anything more challenging? Commander Vextol made a noise that sounded like air escaping from a damaged hull breach. Chief Academic Officer Prel 9 had gone completely motionless in what I recognized as his species equivalent of catatonic shock. Senior Combat Analyst Drac Voss was frantically taking notes while muttering calculations under his breath. Admiral Crex Theta was the first to speak. Instructor Korth 9, I want a full tactical analysis of everything we just witnessed submitted to my office within 6 hours. I also want complete psychological and physiological profiles of all incoming human recruits expedited immediately. Yes, sir, I replied, though I had no idea how to even begin such a report. Furthermore, the Admiral continued, I want Cadet Reeves transferred to our Advanced Officer Candidate program effective immediately. If this level of performance is representative of human military potential, we need to completely restructure our integration protocols. Maya had climbed out of the simulation area and was now examining the weapon she had used, apparently checking for signs of wear or damage. Not bad equipment, she commented. A little light for serious work, but adequate for training purposes. Light? Zeke Prime squeaked. That is a standard military assault rifle rated for frontline combat operations. Sure, but where I come from, we use heavier tools for real construction work. This thing would barely qualify as a nail gun back in Detroit. The implications hit me like a meteor strike. If military-grade weapons were considered light equipment by human standards, what did that say about their industrial capabilities? Their technological development? Their entire civilization? Maya, I said carefully, what exactly do you use for serious work on Earth? She grinned, and for the first time since meeting her, I understood why evolution had given humans those predatory forward-facing eyes. Well, for basic demolition, we have shaped charges that can take down entire city blocks. For precision work, we use plasma cutters that can slice through starship armor. And for really big projects. She paused, apparently considering whether to continue. Yes? Admiral Crex Theta prompted from his holo display. Well, let me put it this way. We have construction equipment that could probably level this entire station if someone pointed it in the wrong direction. The observation gallery erupted in alarmed conversations as the assembled officers tried to process this information. I found myself reassessing everything I thought I knew about humanity's place in galactic civilization. Of course, Maya continued, most of that stuff is too dangerous for civilian use, so we keep it locked up pretty tight. Would not want anyone getting hurt accidentally. Define accidentally, Commander Vextol requested, his voice strained. Oh, you know, industrial accidents, or equipment malfunctions, that sort of thing. Last year, a malfunctioning fusion cutter took out about 6 city blocks before they got it shut down. Nobody was seriously hurt, but the cleanup was a real pain. The silence that followed this statement was so complete that I could hear the environmental systems cycling air through the ventilation shafts. 6 city blocks, Senior Combat Analyst Drac Voss repeated slowly. From a single piece of construction equipment. It was an old model, Maya said defensively. The newer ones have better safety protocols. Admiral Crex Theta cleared his throat, a sound that somehow conveyed both authority and barely controlled panic. Cadet Reeves, I think it would be beneficial for all parties involved if you could provide us with more detailed information about Earth's industrial capabilities. Sure, no problem, though you might want to sit down for some of it. We get pretty creative when it comes to building things. As the assembled officers began what I suspected would be a very long and very disturbing briefing session, I found myself reflecting on the fundamental question that had been nagging at me since Maya first walked into my training bay. If this was what humans considered normal, what did that make the rest of us? The answer, I was beginning to suspect, was inadequately prepared for everything. 3 hours later, after Maya had finished explaining why humans considered antimatter containment systems to be standard safety equipment for construction sites, I submitted my resignation from the Galactic Defense Academy. Not because I was afraid of humans, you understand, but because I suddenly realized that after 20 cycles of training the galaxy's elite warriors, I had absolutely no idea what actual combat readiness looked like. Apparently, it looked like a bored construction worker from Detroit who could dismantle military simulations the way normal people peeled fruit. The galaxy, I decided, was going to be a very different place once word got out about what humans were actually capable of. I just hoped we were all ready for it.